The sky above Germany burns at 25,000 feet. Four-engine bombers drone forward in tight combat boxes, contrails slicing across the freezing air. Below them, flak blossoms into violent black flowers, bursts of steel and smoke ripping through formation. Gunners scan the horizon. Interphone chatter crackles. Engines strain. Then radar operators whisper something new. Fast contact. Very fast. Out of the sun, too fast to track, a silver shape tears through the bomber stream. No propeller blur. No warning. Just a blur of swept wings and twin-jet exhaust trails. Within seconds, a B-17 explodes. Another peels away, engines aflame. The escorts, Mustangs and Thunderbolts, dive hard to intercept, but they are too slow. The attacker is already gone, climbing vertically in a scream of turbines. It wasn't a fighter. It was something the world had never seen in combat before. The Messerschmitt Me 262, the first operational jet-powered fighter in history. It was faster than anything in the sky, deadlier than anything the Allies had faced. And for a brief moment in 1944, it looked like it might change the course of the war. But it didn't. Because by the time Germany unleashed its deadliest jet, the war was already lost. The temperature is 40 degrees below zero. Inside the bomber's cockpit, frost creeps along the metal framing. Oxygen masks hiss. Waist gunners flex numb fingers over twin .50 calibers, scanning the thin blue horizon for the familiar silhouette of enemy fighters. They know the rhythm of air combat now, contrails forming, dots growing larger, propellers flashing in the sun before the first tracers stitch through the sky. But this time there is no propeller. Only a streak. It crosses the formation in less than a heartbeat. The intercom erupts. Jet. Jet at 3 o'clock high. Too late. A short, brutal burst flashes from the nose of the attacker. 30mm shells slam into aluminum skin. One bomber's wing shears away. Another rolls inverted, smoke pouring from ruptured fuel tanks as crewmen bail out into the freezing void. The silver aircraft doesn't turn with the formation. It doesn't circle back like a conventional fighter. It simply accelerates, climbing almost vertically, twin exhaust plumes carving white scars through the sky. Escort fighters dive to pursue. Throttles forward. Manifolds screaming. But the distance widens instead of shrinking. The new predator is already gone. On the ground below, radar stations report contacts moving at speeds previously thought impossible for manned aircraft. Anti-aircraft batteries struggle to track them. Commanders scramble to understand what they're facing. The answer had been whispered about for months in intelligence briefings. Germany had fielded the world's first operational jet fighter. The Messerschmitt Me 262 was not just another aircraft. It was a leap forward in aviation, a machine that seemed to belong to the future rather than the desperate final months of 1944. For Allied air crews, it introduced a new kind of fear, not the grinding terror of dogfights, but the sudden, surgical violence of a weapon that appeared without warning and disappeared before retaliation was possible. For the Luftwaffe, it was hope compressed into aluminum and steel. A belief that raw speed and concentrated firepower could fracture the bomber offensive strangling the Reich. For a fleeting moment, the sky over Europe was no longer ruled by propellers. It was ruled by turbines. And that moment would change air warfare forever, even if it could not change the outcome of the war. By 1943, the Luftwaffe was collapsing. The Allied strategic bombing campaign was relentless. Daylight raids by American B-17s and B-24s smashed German industry. Night after night, RAF bombers turned cities into infernos. Fighter losses mounted. Experienced pilots were dead. Fuel reserves dwindled. Germany needed a technological miracle. That miracle had been in development since before the war. A revolutionary aircraft powered not by pistons and propellers, but by turbojet engines. The concept promised unprecedented speed. No torque. No prop drag. Pure thrust. But development delays, political interference, and production bottlenecks slowed deployment. Even Adolf Hitler insisted it be modified into a bomber first, diverting precious time. When the Me 262 finally entered squadron service in 1944, the Reich was already under siege. 2. Technical superiority, a predator in the sky. The Me 262 was unlike anything flying. Powered by twin Junkers Jumo 004 turbojets, it could exceed 540 miles per hour, nearly 100 miles per hour faster than most Allied fighters. In level flight, even the P-51 Mustang struggled to catch it. Its climb rate was formidable once at speed. Its swept wings reduced drag. Its tricycle landing gear improved ground handling, a rare feature at the time. But speed was only part of the terror. The aircraft carried 430 million Malawian kwacha's 108 cannons in its nose. Each shell was devastating. A short burst could tear a heavy bomber apart. Against tight formations it was catastrophic. Some variants carried R-4M air-to-air rockets, unguided but deadly against bomber streams. Fired in salvos, they could scatter formations before the jet even closed for cannon range. In the right hands, the Me-262 was a scalpel slicing into the Allied war machine. 3. Combat reality, baptism by fire. One of its most feared units was Jägerschwader 7, the world's first operational jet fighter wing. On March 18, 1945, as hundreds of American bombers approached Berlin, Me-262s scrambled. They climbed high, then dove through the bomber formation in coordinated passes. Within minutes, multiple B-17s and B-24s were falling. American crews described the attacks as lightning strikes. There was no dogfight, no turning battle. The jet simply appeared, fired, and vanished at impossible speed. Yet the Me-262 had vulnerabilities. The Jumo engines were fragile. Throttle changes could cause flameouts. Engine lifespan was painfully short, sometimes under 25 operational hours due to material shortages. And most critically, the jet was vulnerable during takeoff and landing. Allied pilots learned quickly. Instead of chasing the Me-262 at altitude, they loitered near known airfields. When jets descended to land, slow, gear down, engine spooling, they pounced. Speed meant nothing on final approach. For the enemy perspective, fear and adaptation. To Allied airmen, the Me-262 was both terrifying and frustrating. Escort pilots reported seeing it outrun everything. Bomber crews feared its cannon bursts more than flak. Intelligence analysts warned that mass production could shift air superiority. But numbers matter in war. Only about 1,400 Me-262s were built. Fewer than 300 saw consistent combat. Fuel shortages grounded many. Replacement pilots lacked training. Airfields were bombed relentlessly. Meanwhile, the Allies produced tens of thousands of piston-engine fighters. Quantity crushed innovation. 5. Strategic impact, too little, too late. The Me-262 did shoot down hundreds of Allied aircraft. It proved the viability of jet combat. It forced tactical adjustments. But it could not stop the bombing campaign. It could not halt the Red Army advancing from the east. It could not reverse the collapse of German industry. By 1945, the Luftwaffe lacked what truly wins wars: trained pilots, fuel, secure infrastructure, and time. The jet was extraordinary. The situation was hopeless. By early 1945, the skies over the Reich had become a laboratory of desperation. Pilots flying the Messerschmitt Me 262 were often rushed through conversion training. Many had mastered piston-engine fighters like the Bf-109, but jet propulsion demanded different instincts. Throttle discipline was critical. Slam it forward too fast and the Jumo 004 engines could flame out. Ease it back too abruptly and compressor stalls could cripple the aircraft mid-flight. Yet when flown correctly, the jet was unmatched in a straight-line intercept. Luftwaffe commanders began deploying boom and zoom tactics at unprecedented speed, high-altitude staging, shallow dive acceleration, one firing pass, then immediate vertical extension beyond escort range. Traditional dogfighting was discouraged. The Me-262 was not built to turn tightly with aircraft like the P-51 Mustang. It was built to strike with overwhelming velocity. In some engagements, bomber formations reported losing multiple aircraft within seconds before escorts could even react. The psychological impact was enormous. Radio chatter from Allied crews frequently described the jets as unstoppable. But statistics told a harsher truth. Sortie rates were low. Fuel allocations were inconsistent. Replacement engines were scarce. For every successful interception, multiple jets sat grounded awaiting parts. The Me-262 dominated moments. The Allies dominated the war. When the war ended, the Me-262 sat abandoned on shattered runways, silent proof of what might have been. Allied engineers swarmed captured airfields, studying its swept wings, its engines, its aerodynamic design. The jet age had arrived and everyone knew it. Within a few years, the world's air forces would be dominated by aircraft shaped by the same principles pioneered by Germany's desperate gamble. But history is not written by prototypes. It is written by timing. The Me-262 was a weapon born of brilliance, and doomed by delay. It symbolized a regime that believed technology alone could compensate for strategic failure. It proved that speed without fuel means nothing. Power without logistics collapses. Innovation without time cannot save a crumbling empire. In the end, Germany's deadliest jet did not change the war. It only showed the world what the future would look like. And as the contrails of piston fighters faded into the jet age, one truth remained suspended in the cold air above Europe. The Me-262 was faster than anything in the sky, but it could not outrun defeat. When Allied troops overran German airfields in 1945, they did not just capture abandoned aircraft, they captured the future. Rows of Messerschmitt Me 262 fighters sat scattered across broken concrete, some half-assembled, others stripped for parts. Fuel drums lay empty. Tools were abandoned mid-repair. Mechanics had fled. The war had outrun the machine that was meant to save it. Intelligence teams moved quickly. Engineers photographed every rivet line. They disassembled the Jumo 004 engines piece by piece, studying compressor stages and turbine blades. They measured wing sweep angles, control surfaces, fuel systems. The lessons would not be wasted. Within a decade, jet fighters would dominate the skies over Korea. Within 2 decades, supersonic aircraft would slice through the sound barrier as a matter of routine. The conceptual leap the Me-262 represented, thrust over torque, speed over maneuver, became the foundation of modern air combat doctrine. Yet legacy is not measured only in innovation. The Me-262 revealed something deeper about warfare in the industrial age. Technological superiority cannot compensate for strategic collapse. Germany's infrastructure was shattered. Synthetic fuel plants were bombed relentlessly. Rail networks were severed. Pilot training hours were slashed due to shortages. Even the finest aircraft cannot fly without logistics. The jet was fast, but factories were burning. It was lethal, but the airfields were cratered. It was revolutionary. But revolutions in warfare require stability, production depth, and time, resources the Reich no longer possessed. Historians still debate the counterfactual. What if the Me-262 had entered service in 1943 in significant numbers? What if engine reliability had improved sooner? What if it had been deployed strictly as a fighter from the beginning? But war is not decided by what if. It is decided by momentum, by supply lines, by trained crews, by sustained capacity. In the end, the Me-262 became a symbol, not of victory but of squandered potential. A machine decades ahead of its time, trapped inside a collapsing state. As piston-driven fighters faded into history and jet contrails became the new signature of air power, one truth endured. The Me-262 proved that the future had arrived. It simply arrived too late to change the past. Even decades later, the Messerschmitt Me 262 remains a symbol of both innovation and tragedy. Aviation historians study its design as a blueprint for modern jet fighters: swept wings, concentrated firepower, turbojet propulsion, lessons that would shape the Cold War sky. Yet its story is also a reminder that raw technological brilliance cannot substitute for strategy, logistics, and timing. For every Me-262 that streaked through the clouds, countless others remained grounded, engines cold, pilots inexperienced, war supplies exhausted. The jet proved that speed could kill, but speed alone could not win. Its legacy is not in victories, but in the shadow it cast over a world entering the jet age. Silent now on empty airfields, the Me-262 whispers the truth of war. Innovation without preparation is a fleeting glory, impressive, brilliant, but ultimately powerless against the tide of history.